All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining the APAC office hours. As a reminder, all of this is being recorded so that we can eventually post it publicly. I know I've said that the last couple times. Still getting into process. I think we figured out how to actually publish these videos so that we can put them on our blog. So that should be coming shortly. As kind of is now the routine, what I'm going to do is kind of give an announcement for kind of what's new on the semantic kernel side, and then we can open up for questions. One of the bits of feedback that I got from the earlier session today for US and Europe was one of the things that Alex Chow used to do for his office hours is he had a PowerPoint. And one of the great values of that is if you were coming back to the video, you could easily scrub and see what folks are talking about. So I'm not going to, I haven't prepared a PowerPoint, especially as y'all kind of answer questions. But in a bit, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And as we kind of talk about different topics, I'll signpost it using kind of PowerPoint. I'll just type something real quick so that if folks want to refer to it later, it's a little bit easier to do. Okay. All righty. So in terms of what's new, I want to go ahead and share my screen. What's new with semantic kernel? Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so what's new with semantic kernel the last week or so? So the main update that I wanted to share with this audience is a lot of what I talked about the last couple weeks, where we're investing in new AI connectors, new memory connectors, and agents. We're starting to see some more progress, and it's visible in our repo through ADRs. So if we go ahead and pull up our GitHub project, I just want to kind of highlight some of the changes that are in progress so that if you want to provide feedback because you're part of the community, you have a way of doing so. So the first thing I want to call out is our enhancements or changes that we are looking at for our memory connectors to make it easier for you to implement a RAG pattern in semantic kernel. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, grabbing information from a vector database, including in a prompt so you can get better grounded results. I'm not going to go through the whole ADR, but I just want to kind of make sure that y'all are aware, and I'll go ahead and share a link to it. We have about a handful of options that we're considering, many of which are actually kind of already supported today. And we're really trying to choose what is the hero way of supporting memory so that we can update our documentation and improve the API before making all of these memory connectors non-experimental. What I'm currently pushing for right now, just so that this audience is aware, is option 2, which is memory as a plugin. So whenever you write a prompt, being able to use something like handlebars or the vanilla semantic kernel template language for you to be able to make those queries, make those requests, and inject them inside of your prompt, right? So that is available in our repo. I'm going to go ahead and share the link to that, just in case any of you want to provide feedback. The next thing that is kind of new is our way of integrating, merging in new memory connector, I'm sorry, AI connectors. So as a community, y'all have done a really great job of actually creating new connectors to Llama, to Gemini, to all of these other services. But we as a semantic kernel team haven't done a really great job of actually merging them in. And that's because it's really hard to do an adequate job reviewing many of these PRs because they can be thousands of lines long. I think the Gemini PR ended up being over 11,000 lines long, which, if you can imagine, is just really, really hard for us to do our due diligence and actually merge it in and make sure that we aren't that we can maintain our code quality. And so I just want to share with all of you that we have a new feature branch strategy for any community-driven connectors. In terms of what the process will look like is as someone wants to come in and create a new connector, let's say, for example, Gemini, you will work with our team so that we can go ahead and create for you a brand new feature branch. So I think if we come into our list of feature branches, we can actually see that we have a new branch that we've created in our main repo for Gemini. And the goal is, instead of doing a gigantic PR into the main repo for the entire connector, we'll work with you in your feature branch to go ahead and create smaller comments. So here we can see inside of smaller PRs, which we can kind of see for the Gemini one, which is going to be easier for our team to review and manage. So again, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this ADR just in case you're interested. Probably if you're not interested in actually creating a new connector, probably the best part of this ADR, if we go to the files changed and actually look at it, is our prioritization. So we want to be really public about which models and deployments we as the Semantic kernel team want to support and develop first. So about midway through on the file, I'm going to go ahead again, share the link to this. We can see kind of the Semantic kernel team's priorities for models. So obviously GTP4, that's already supported. But next on the list is we want to support Microsoft's out-of-the-box model, Phi. Sorry, not out of the box, but Microsoft's created model. I've talked about Gemini quite a few times. Llama is obviously really important. And then we have Mistral, Claude, and Titan kind of rounding out the end. So those are the models. And depending on where you deploy them, whether it's Azure, Hugging Face, locally with Ollama, we are going to be working with the community to build the actual connectors. And so you can kind of see how we're prioritizing that today. We have Ollama, which there's a community-driven one today. But we also want to, of course, support Google, Anthropic, and Amazon, which is they have their Amazon Bedrock. Okay. My ask to all of you is, if there are any connectors that, models that are missing or deployment types that are missing that you want to see implemented in Semantic kernel, please go ahead and file those issues. We can update this ADR and try to figure out where to fit them in from a prioritization perspective. Okay. So I'm going to take a pause there and see if there's any questions on our updates. If not, I have one more update on agents, and then we can dive into Q&A. Update on agents. So as many of you already know, we do have an experimental package within Semantic kernel today for agents. So we can take a look at what that looks like here. If we go into sources and drill into experimental and then agents. So we have like an iAgent interface, an agent builder, all this great stuff, right? And we have the samples within our .NET kernel syntax examples that actually show how to use all of these different agents, right? So none of that's new. What we as the Semantic kernel team have realized as we've been doing this experimental package is our current abstractions are very, very tightly coupled to the assistance API that OpenAI created. And we've heard from folks that being able to build agents with any model is really, really important. And so the last ADR that I want to share with you is this one. Again, I'm going to share in the chat. Is how we're currently thinking about agents within Semantic kernel. So we're starting to collect all of the different requirements. Of course, we want to support Assistance API, but we also want to support these other types of agents so that they can start collaborating with each other. So if you're interested in the agent space and you want to help contribute or change our direction, if you think it's the wrong one, please, again, look at this ADR and provide us some feedback. Okay, all righty. So with that, we can open it up to our Q&A. To get started, I will go ahead and take a look at the chat. It looks like there's already a few questions coming in. We do have that email alias, just to remind folks. where is the email is? If you have questions that you think of throughout the week. I don't believe we got anything, but if you did send something in, we didn't see it, please let me know. That might have meant I set up the DL incorrectly. So I will take a look at the first one. It's from Daniel. I'll start reading it off. If Daniel, you want to raise your hand and you want to speak to it, go for it. Let's do it.
Hey, Matthew. Yeah, I was just putting together some demos for some stuff this week. We're using the Stepwise Planner V2. And one thing I ran into was I wanted to use a prompt template, and it looks like it's slightly changed from the old Stepwise Planner, the old planners where you could just pass the template in, and it seems to be injected as a delegate. Is that? But I couldn't find that sort of documented anywhere, or an example of that. Is that?
So just to make sure I understand your scenario correctly. So you used to use the old Stepwise.
Yeah, yep.
You're moving to the new one, and you're wanting to add additional context, and so you're wanting to change the actual prompt that's used within the planner. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, I was using parameterized templates, and so I was passing in the actual prompt template and the parameters in the old planner. This was probably pre 1.0, and when I moved to the new function calling Stepwise Planner, I was just trying to work out how to do something similar. So I've got basically the prompt is templated or parameterized.
Got it. And just to make sure, this is a prompt for the actual plan generation and not the
not the planner. It's not the plan. It's not the generated plan. So basically, yeah, because I can obviously just string inject, but
So we do have some deficiencies with our current planners, and we now have 2 engineers working on burning down on them. I believe, I want to say we have an issue for this one. At least I know we have it for the handlebars, maybe not for the stepwise. We can just take a quick look real quick. In the meantime, though, if you've taken a look at the new stepwise planner and see how it works, it's really just using function calling behind the scenes to do that reasoning process where we used to have a really long prompt. And so one thing I might recommend you try to do is, instead of using, if you're really wanting to use a customized templated prompt, instead of using the stepwise planner, let's go to samples. Actually, let's go to here. Going ahead and using automatic function calling. I don't know if you've already tried this yet.
Gotcha. No, I didn't try that.
Okay, so if we take a look at our automatic function calling, the way it works is you build your kernel. Let's make this a little bigger. You build your kernel, give it a plugin, and when you call the actual LLM with your plugin, you can pass in a property that says, "Hey, I want to turn in auto function calling," right? When you do that, you can, here we're passing in a chat history, but you can also pass in a templated prompt. Actually, let's take a look at this one. This is closer to what you're actually doing. Okay, great. So here we have a templated prompt, right? And
Gotcha.
then when you here we're creating the chat and we're invoking it. We're not passing in that setting, but you can pass in that setting saying turn on auto function calling, and it'll do that automatic loop for you. So that would be my recommendation until we have a way of customizing the prompt of the planner.
Okay, cool. No, awesome. Thanks, Matthew. I'll give it a try.
Cool. Awesome.
I did have another question as well.
Yes, let's do it.
I was also going to do some stuff with agents, and I found that at the time only the OpenAI service was supported, not Azure OpenAI. And I think that probably has something to do with the API support for agents, but I wasn't sure. Is that still the case, or is that going to change?
That is unfortunately true today. Azure OpenAI does not have the Assistance API available yet.
Gotcha.
What I will share is, as part of the Azure OpenAI SDK, they do have a PR out right now to actually support the Assistance API. So you can take that as a sign, like they're getting close. They're getting close.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's just, I think it's taking a little bit longer than all of us hoped. My assumption, this is based on just my understanding of how Microsoft works. My assumption is like the OpenAI Assistance API is like a legit service, right? Like it has to store the chat objects. It has to create these Python sandbox. Like it's doing a lot more than just having an in and out of a model. And so the Azure OpenAI team probably had a lot more work on their plate to support this entire feature set. But they are working on it. It's coming soon. We just have to be a little bit more patient.
Oh, good. I just thought I'd check. Cool. Thanks, Matthew.
And you can get OpenAI credit for as little as $5, right? So to try it out.
Yeah, I know, but given I was going to be demonstrating it at a Microsoft first-party event, I thought it would be maybe a little bit.
Sure. What I've been recommending to folks is, because like we're fairly confident this thing is coming as part of Azure. Start using the OpenAI. Use the OpenAI APIs right now to become familiar, become an expert. So as soon as the Azure one drops, you're not having to start from zero.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, Dan, we already asked that one. And then Vic, you're dropping in another question that you received. Again, this is a call out for folks. If you do have a question, go ahead and add it to the chat. And also feel free to go ahead and just raise your hand and we can call on you. I guess the question was, so we're a Microsoft partner with full NDA. Awesome. And we have already done a few MTC virtual engagements around Semantic Kernel. Are there any private resources that can be shared to assist our Semantic Kernel development? I guess for everyone else on the call, for the public community, even for folks in Microsoft, Semantic Kernel kind of prides itself on being so open. So I guess what you see publicly is what you'd also get if you had an NDA. And if there is content that needs to be created, which we have a backlog, we know that we have gaps, let us know and we'll create it so that we can share with everyone. Just to reinforce just how public we are, if we go to, let me just do the question right here. Any secret private help /docs from Semantic Kernel? Question mark. Okay, so if we go to our GitHub, we go to projects, and we go to the Semantic Kernel project. Every single thing that we are currently working on in a given sprint, you can see here. You can see all of our friendly faces working on these different tasks. And you can kind of watch a task kind of move along. And then if you go to our backlog, we've been trying to do a decent job of prioritizing these things as more or less stacked ranked. And if you have a language of choice, you can select these different filters and see what are we working on from .NET. For Python, I think last time we talked about how getting Python to V1 is really important, and we're using this as our public way of sharing with the community kind of what our progress is, right? We call that out in our blog with a deep link to that, the exact same page. So this is us kind of coding out in the open, and as we learn from folks, hey, Semantic Kernel hard, or I'm missing some documentation, can you help me out? We'll add that to our public documentation so that everyone can have access to it immediately. What I am hearing from folks today on what's particularly hard with Semantic Kernel, what we don't have good samples on, is all of the great work that we've done around dependency injection. So if you are using .NET and you want to see how to actually use Semantic Kernel with your current services, today we don't do a good job of explaining that. So I do want to share, as part of this sprint, we have an engineer building out a sample that shows how to build an agent with several different types of plugins that show those dependency injection scenarios that we've heard customers wanting examples for. And the way we're going to do that is to keep it somewhat relatable. Is we'll be showing you how to create a home automation agent that can get the current time. So a super simple plugin with dependency injection, how to turn on and off different light bulbs. So we want to be able to show you how you can create a plugin with its own custom constructor so that you can include things like the name of the light and the room, and you can inject a service like the house, right? And then we'll also show you more complex scenarios like calling APIs for the current weather, sunset, sunrise, so that you could ask a complex question like, hey, for sunset, can you go ahead and turn off all the lights? And we believe that will demonstrate most of the complex patterns that you would need from a DI perspective and from a plugin development perspective. So within a week's time, that should be landing. Okay. Great question. Great question. All righty. Anything else? So it looks like those are all the comments from the side. If folks have questions, again, feel free to raise your hand. I also have all the questions from this morning in the chat. So I'm going to have some awkward silence. And if it goes on long enough, I'll also pull up some of my favorite questions from this morning.
I guess a bit of a follow-up, Matthew. Last night, someone just reached out and asked about what would be the best way for the APAC folks to be able to contribute to the Python development. Would that be sort of reviewing docs and issues? Obviously, the timing for the office hours, not really suitable for us. So what would be a good way for that?
So for APAC, yes, our current hours for the Python development stuff is not good. Let's take this as a one-off right now. So if you don't mind doing an introduction with me and Evan Matson, I'm just going to type that in the chat. Evan Matson. Yep. Then we can figure out what's best path forward. What I will say is, if there's like two flavors of contribution. There's, hey, I'm trying to use Semantic Kernel and I run into a bug or I ran into a feature gap and I just want it fixed and I'm going to contribute myself. So if that's you, what we recommend, folks, is create an issue. We will kind of bless it and you can go ahead and create a PR. So that's route number one. Route number two is if you are, I'm so into Semantic Kernel that I want to just help move this thing forward so it gets a mind share, blah, 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 blah. If that's you, then I think working on our backlog and looking at that and seeing if there's tasks that you want to work on is probably the best bet. And just so that folks on this call are aware, we started adding this needs help tag. We've only done this with Python so far, but we'll add it to the other ones. But these are tasks that we think are theoretically simple enough that someone from the community could work on without being deeply embedded in the Semantic Kernel team. So if this is you, if you're like, yeah, I really want to kind of help, let's take a good example. I really want to help improve how Python does prompt templates. Let us know in the comments and we can work with you one-on-one. And if you can't make our Python development hours, or if you're asking kind of when we have a break, when we don't have one, we'll work one-on-one with you to make sure that you can create your first PR or second or third or 100th PR. Great question. Okay.
Thanks, Matthew. Good. I'll pass it on. I'll follow up on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at some of the previous questions and I'll just kind of read those out loud and so that y'all can get some of the context as well. One of the questions we got was kind of what our thoughts and ideas are around Llama Index, especially if you're trying to build a RAG application. I don't know if I've shared it with this audience, but I've started frankly recommending customers not to build a RAG app if they can help it, because it's just so complicated. Not only are you building an agent, but you have to basically build a custom search engine as well. But if you do want to start, or frankly, if you need to build a RAG application so you can build an agent that answers questions about your corpus of documentation, like you have no choice. The recommendations that I would give is try to use kind of the Microsoft services like Azure AI Search. They have some great technology, and if and only when that doesn't work and you have to go off the deep end, Llama Index is, from our vantage point, the strongest library when it comes to chunking and structuring this semantic information so that you can easily query it to give to either humans or for agents so that you can perform RAG. Because of that, our hope is to drive further integrations with Llama Index. It's really easy for us in the Python library, and we're exploring ways of doing that within the .NET library as well. Since we want to have a really healthy ecosystem, especially in the .NET space, since we're close to Microsoft, we're also looking for sponsors within Microsoft for who could actually build a .NET port of Llama Index. So those are the types of conversations we're having inside of Microsoft. I'm trying to drive everyone to kind of really take a big bet on Llama Index because it is kind of the best solution out there when it comes to RAG. Okay. I guess show of hands. I'm actually curious about this audience. How many of y'all are building a RAG application, or what I guess the other option is like talk to your data, so calling APIs to either get information back or to automate something. So Gary, you raised your hand on RAG. I guess folks, you can use the team raise your hand feature. It can't just be Gary doing RAG. Okay, Ashley raised their hand. Gary. Okay, so we have okay, Daniel. I guess what has y'all's experience been like building RAG applications?
One thing, Matthew, I mean, recently we implemented, though kind of the team is not using semantic kernels features mostly. They are using a couple of LangChain features, so because the application is on Python. And behind the scene, but we are using Azure OpenAI APIs only, right? So what we noticing, for the same questions, answers are basically different. I mean, even kind of we set this temperature to 0 so that answer should not be creative, right? It's our own data, right? So it's a set of PDFs which we want kind of uploaded, right? And we are using vector DB, right? Azure AI search, and everything we do like semantic search, then text search, right? Both together, right? Even though we have seen that sometime for same questions answer may be same, but most of the time it is a different answer altogether. So this is the kind of things, and then team is saying why for same question answer is basically different. It is so recently we have seen some kind of feature. I think it's in preview, Azure OpenAI side. I don't remember exactly. Let me recollect. So one thing is that I think they have how to generate reproducible output with Azure OpenAI. So there is an article around that. So it's saying that with this, it can be a little be minimized, right? Let me put into chat. So this is the article. I think it is still in preview. Yeah. Learn how to use reproducible output preview, right? Preview feature. I think it's available with GPT-4 1106 and Turbo.
That is crazy. This is, and I haven't clicked on the. Let's go ahead and click on the article.
So
this is using the seed parameter, right?
Yeah. So directly, if you see this context, it is talking about same problem what we have actually currently.
Yes, I believe this was recently added to Semantic Kernel as well. So if you do want to use the seed in Semantic Kernel, you should be able to use that as well.
Okay, makes sense. But yeah, I mean, this is the common problem. I mean, we wanted to know that. I mean, why for same questions, different response every time, or
Yes,
something
yes.
similar?
Yeah. Basically, the seed kind of locks in whatever random number generator they have in the background to make sure they reproduce. Now, they recommend this is really just for testing. So if you have a bunch of tests that you're writing for your AI application, and you want to ensure that it always kind of spits out the same information, and if it does change, you know about it. That's when seed is helpful. I don't know if this is recommended for actual user kind of queries, because it
But
just
yeah,
takes
but
the user to
yeah. In general, what is the best solution to this problem? I mean, where I mean, for same question, different response.
So I would almost say that if that is your expectation, LLMs are the wrong choice, right? Like if you want the exact same response, like verbatim, the vacation policy is that you get Christmas off, right? Like if you want those exact same, that string to always appear,
Yep.
asking an LLM to generate that response is probably not the right approach. Instead, now where you could use LLM is maybe it's like intent direction, like, oh, they're asking about vacation policies, so I need to call this function, or I need to pull up this relevant information, right? But if your goal is to always return the exact same string, the very last thing that your application should do is have the LLM call a function that spits out that hard-coded string, right?
Oh, okay.
And then the actual responsibility of printing information to the screen is no longer in the hands of the LLM. It's in the hands of some native code that you have crafted.
Okay, so you are saying that behind the scene we have to write such kind of functions, right? So that it do those kind of mathematics or whatever kind of matching and all, right? So it should not be LLM job, right? It should be something outside that.
Yes, and it like I don't think you should do this for everything because like the full list of answers that like that's the beauty and value of these LLMs is they can answer things that you hadn't thought of before. But I could see for some very risk sensitive customers, and we have heard some of these requirements where maybe it's illegal. You do not want the LLM to summarize or paraphrase some legal content that needs to be given back to the user, right? You want it to like verbatim copy and paste some content. So for that, just take all the risk out. Don't let the LLM actually generate that content for the user. Instead, have the LLM call a function that prints that content to the user screen.
Okay, sure. Any example short around this?
I don't think so. But let me go ahead and add it to our list of sample requests. I'm gonna do that now. Samples. How to hard code verbatims back. I'm thinking we need to create some samples on like enterprise-y scenarios. One example, I think this is a good one. Hey, I need a verbatim legal substance back. The other one I'm thinking about is approvals. So you don't want always the LLM to just like call whatever function. You want a human in the loop to like approve that function first. So I think I want to start bucketing these types of scenarios together and create a single sample for them.
Yep, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. I guess the other folks building RAG. So it sounds like there's that challenge with RAG, making sure that there's a predictable, reproducible way of getting responses back. What's been y'all's experience with like figuring out chunking, picking out the right vector database? How successful have y'all been with actually querying things back? Have y'all gotten things to work, or has it still been kind of a slog to make it happen? I think Daniel, you're building kind of a POC. I'm interested from like Ashley and Gary. It sounds like y'all are building maybe production things. Or Daniel, yeah. If you come off mute, if you have anything to share, please do.
Well, I can share some of the partners or customers I work with. They've done a lot of experiment with RAG. This was using Azure AI Search and using basically they were just creating their own indexes using Azure OpenAI Studio, and the chunking, they were basically pulling a bunch of stuff out of Confluence, right? And they've just found the chunking was pretty, and this has nothing to do with semantic kernel, but chunking was always the problem, right? You know, especially if it's developer documentation where it's a big bunch of tables and it'll chunk it up halfway through a table and the heading will go missing, and so the context is lost. And the chunkers have improved over time, but I've done some experiments using, you know, I pulled all the PDFs for all the ARVICs, the white papers on prompt engineering, and went, well, okay, I'll create a prompt engineering prompt, you know, use that. But of course, the chunking was pretty challenging. So you ended up with not a, you know, I think a smart chunker could do a better job, and I think that's probably where kernel memory is working hard, right? So I haven't yet gone and redone this in kernel memory, because this is for, you know, customer demos who are very new to the whole thing in the first place, and so you know, what you're doing is showing them the basic stuff, and that it works pretty well. But if they want the best, they have to work on this themselves. They have to control the index, control the chunking, and therefore that's where kernel memory goes. But you know, got to start them at 101 before you can go down to the 300.
Yeah. There was a very large ramp up. Okay, I agree.
That's that was what I've seen.
Yeah, both Llama Index and our kernel memory kind of trying to tackle that smarter chunking. So asking the LLM to create these chunks for you, which I have heard and seen does improve things, but very advanced, very advanced. In terms of like what I recommend customers to do, so there's a few folks that didn't raise their hand on RAG. If you're looking for quick and easy wins, what I've started to recommend to customers is kind of look at your company and the process that they run, and where does a human have to come in to like redirect things or create approvals. Like think of it more from a process management and optimization problem instead of like a chat conversation problem. And if you think about it as a process optimization problem, you can start thinking about where can an LLM make decisions where a human really doesn't need to be in the picture, because then it becomes really easy, because you can model your process and go, oh, what context does the human always get when making that decision? You can hard code that context in, right? You don't have to do a fancy search engine. So an example in Microsoft is we have these things called ICMs. So whenever something goes wrong in one of our technology, we have to figure out like what severity is it? Is it something that we have to call an engineer for, or is it something that can wait, right? And so I could imagine that process being improved with LLMs, because you could provide the context of what the issue is. You could provide context of similar issues that customer are having. You can provide context on the customer, is it an important customer or not, right? You can hard code all that stuff in, and you can create a prompt that asks the agent, like, what should I do next, right? That, I think, are probably the easier kind of quick wins that I'm hoping more companies start doing, because that's a type of process that eats up people's time that you could automate, and you already have all the context in hand to write that prompt to get the right behavior from these LLMs. So as you're looking for new problems to solve, using that kind of frame of reference, I think will help. Okay. All righty.
I got one more thing, Matthew. Just around RAG. Currently I'm also building a sort of a chatbot sort of CRUD sort of application using sort of RAG pattern. One of the challenges that I have is around the use of kind of ranking. Kind of when you try to sort of say just a shopping app or whatever, where you have like a list of items, and then you wanted to add sort of different categories or different I don't know, like tags or metadata to basically influence the ranking of the results that you get out of the kind of the interactions that you ask the chatbot. It is still not easy. I would say we've got, within AI search, we've got hybrid search and so on, where you have keyword and you have vector and so on. But influencing that ranking, I think I'll probably need to sort of explore more. But that's something that sort of I'm baffling at the moment around that, and probably kernel memory. It's something that we could
just to
sort
make
of
this a
explore.
little bit, yeah, just to make this more concrete for me. So I'm talking my shopping chat bot, and I say, hey, I'm looking for some new shoes. It sounds like what you're doing is you want to enrich kind of the information about, in this case, shoes or whatever product with different tags, like, oh, this is a shoe. These are the colors in it, like black, white, whatever.
Yeah, or maybe like quality shoes versus, less quality shoes or something like that, where you can say, hey, this is a tag where you've got like.
So this, I think this is actually a really great example of where I think trying to shoehorn everything into RAG can be dangerous. Where instead using function calling or calling APIs can yield potentially better results. Because what you're talking about is what if I want the AI to reason on structured data, right? Which for RAG is really, really hard because you're basically doing keyword matching. If instead you already have an API, I'm assuming if this is like a shopping website, you probably already have an API that allows you to filter on color, size, maybe average star rating, right? So instead of pushing all that inside of a vector memory, just give the AI through function calling, through plugins, the access to this API so it can start searching for products itself. Now, there is a world where you would want to do kind of a hybrid, both of those things at the same time. Hey, I'm looking for some high quality shoes that also, I don't know, what's something that you wouldn't have a tag for that have a zipper lace, right? Instead of tying laces, right? That you're not going to have a tag for that. So you do want to use semantic search to look through all the descriptions, right? And so what I would imagine what you would do is you would provide it an API that understands how to reason over all of these different categories. It could then use that information to filter using, I believe there's filtering support in Azure AI Search. Is that right? You use that information to filter all that information, and then whatever the filtered information is, you would then use vector similarity search on that very small subset of data that's left. So I think that would probably be kind of using both function calling and memory together in a system where you're getting the best of both worlds.
Got it. You're good. I'll try that.
And now I'm excited about, I need to add that to our sample list too, because I think that could actually address a lot of folks' problem where they're trying to do everything with either APIs or everything with memory. Actually, there probably is a hybrid world. Daniel.
Yeah, I'd add to that. Sorry, I'll take my hand down. I'd add to that because I've recently been doing putting together a retail demo. I found all of the product data for a particular DIY store. They made it public as a public data set, and it has the product description plus a bunch of free attributes for every product, right? But they could be, product color, but they could also be random things like safety. So what you're saying is the answer would be maybe convert the product description into the actual JSON text that you run through the embedding and generate the vector, whereas all of the attributes that could be any number, just a key value store, for each doc product, you would say these are the attributes, and any of these you could potentially filter on, right? If I really need color, if I really care about color, or if I need a specific safety rating or a waterproof rating or something, I could go and look at that. So that's sort of how you're saying it might be the better way of doing it, rather than just chucking a big blob of text that has bullet point safety, waterproofing is this, and right? Is that what it sounds like what you're saying?
Spot on. Yes. Because these LLMs with function calling support, they're really good at providing like enum values, right? Or the filtering type of logic, right? So use that ingrained part of the model through function calling, and then use what embeddings are good at, which is just like arbitrary random strings.
Yeah.
Right? Use the right technology for the job.
I think it'd be great to have some demos on that, because I think what we often see, right, all the UI driven tools that everyone sees, and these AI studios, they do the basics, and they sort of lead you to believe just point something at a folder and go for it, and it'll figure it all out. What would be great is some demos on, hey, more complex, building a semantic index using a more flexible scheme, and then pulling that out. But I'm guessing that's a kernel memory thing, right? Kernel memory does all the memory pipelining stuff, and theoretically, because I remember you do have the ability to pass queries or query parameters into kernel memory, right? When you're saying, give me these records.
Yes.
I think there was.
Yeah, you can get filters.
Yeah.
The thing
Right,
thing that's missing is, yeah, you can provide filters. I don't think anyone's written a demo of using function calling to define or set those filters. Right. So I think that's the last hop. And then I think you have a complete story of the AI providing structured data through function calling, and also searching on text through embeddings.
Oh.
Okay, I'm excited. Yes, sample. All right. Okay, any other questions? I'll just do a quick time. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'll also take a quick scan to see if there's any other interesting question. Has anyone tried the new, speaking of embeddings, has anyone tried the new embedding spot from OpenAI yet? Our team hasn't had a chance to. Okay, I see a bunch of head shakes.
Well, I was going to say, how you, because obviously it's got flexible vector sizes. Do you know how that's going to be specifically supported in Semantic Kernel? I guess not. Yeah.
Well, so yeah, we have to update our abstractions and make that configurable, like all that good stuff. The smile on my face is like, we're going to enter a dangerous world where we're going to have all these different embeddings, and they're all going to be different sizes, so they won't be able to work together. And then one day, OpenAI is going to say, "Oh, we've expanded it, so now you can make them even bigger." And after that, like a large company will probably have spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars like creating embeddings for all of their documents, and then they'll have the hard decision. Oh, do we spend another 100, 200 grand re-indexing everything?
Yeah. The Microsoft Fast Track team has done a blog post recently on this problem that we know, and even the same vector space doesn't necessarily map, right, between models. So yeah, prepare for that.
Yeah, I don't have good answers for that one, but things we get to figure out collectively together as a community. Sure. Let's see what else was talked about earlier today. I think those were some of the big ones.
This last question there from the chat, Matthew.
Oh, okay, let me take a look at it. Seems there is overlapping function between prompt flow and semantic kernel. If semantic kernel planner is doing good enough, it's not necessary to do prompt flow, correct? So there is some overlap. The way I like to think about the tools is they're approaching very, very, very different audiences. So if you use prompt flow, it's a more visual kind of representation. I kind of expect that's more for machine learning experts that maybe they're not as proficient in coding, and so they need like a visual diagramming tool. The other thing to know about prompt flow is it's pretty static flow. It doesn't have like a concept of planners or function calling where it can dynamically call like new nodes. So you are pretty much like on rails when you're building something like prompt flow, right? With semantic kernel, the target audience is more of app developers, especially professional enterprise app developers. So you're probably you probably puke whenever you are told, oh, use a GUI in order to build your application. No, you want to be able to actually write code because of the efficiencies and the skills that you've developed as an app developer. So depending on kind of your flavor of tool, I suspect you would want to choose one or the other. And then depending on your needs, if you do need something dynamic like planners or automatic function calling, you almost have no choice but to use something like Semantic Kernel or LangChain to make that possible. And I think PromptFlow has embraced that, right? They make it easy for you to, within one of their nodes, run Semantic Kernel or run LangChain. In fact, the meeting I have after this is with the PromptFlow team on how we can continue to tighten that integration between Semantic Kernel and LangChain. Great question.
Well, last for the
Alright.
day. Last for the day, probably, Matthew. Just around, you mentioned about samples. So if folks want to contribute to samples, so for example, they have maybe great ideas around samples, where would be a good sort of place to put that?
That is a good question. So we're going on a bit of a journey with our own samples. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So up until this past week, we had two major places where samples lived. We had them in our docs folder. Actually, the public one is docs, where we had a bunch of different samples. And this actually populated our documents on the Learn site. And then within the actual main repo, if we go into .NET samples, there's a similar folder in Python. All we had was this kernel syntax examples folder. What I've had the team do over the past couple weeks, though, is actually move all of the documentation samples, the Learn samples, into this repo so that they're all kind of in one place. And so I guess to answer your question, Vic, which if people want to contribute samples, where the hell do they do it? This folder, both the .NET and the Python version of this folder, is the place to go. My ask is before you start creating a new sample, let's have a one-on-one chat. Let's figure out like what you're going to build, what you're going to highlight, what you're going to show. We did very early on have some contributions to these samples folders, and we eventually had to pull them because it was very duplicative or it wasn't clear what the learning or the teaching material was. So the more we can kind of be in lockstep of like, what is the purpose of this sample? And if we can agree as a Semantic Kernel team and you as a contributor, I'd love to get these things added because it'll help us scale. Cool. Yeah, I think that would be my answer. All right, but I've seen a lot of really cool projects, and what I'm starting to do is I'm actually reaching out to folks with open source projects where they have Semantic Kernel that aren't getting as much visibility as maybe they should. And I'm starting to ask folks is, hey, how would you feel if we just like pull in your sample into the main repo? So if you do have some open source repos that you think could be good candidates for first class supported samples, either drop them in the chat, share them with me. And that might be another easy way of getting these things in. Alrighty. Well, thank you all. For those of you in APAC, it's morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. For other folks on the call where it's super late, thank you for staying up late. And I'm excited to chat with y'all again next week.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks,
Cheers,
everyone.
y'all.
Thanks. Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.